Welcome to Storybreakers, the show where we come up with a brand new film idea off the top of our heads. And if you like it, it's yours. I'm your host, Chris Brennan, and with me today to break story is screenwriter and host of the Successful Screenwriter Podcast, Mr. Geoffrey Calhoun. Geoffrey, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me, Chris. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining. So I was actually given the opportunity to be on your podcast a few months ago, and that conversation was absolutely great. And then I reached out to you afterward going, hey, I got an idea. Do you want to take a journey with me and join me where we come up with a brand new idea from the top of our heads? And luckily, you said yes. So thank you very much.
Oh, hell yeah, man. I'm ready for a wild ride. Let's do this thing.
So before we begin, I'd love to leap into a bit of your background on the screenwriter side and examine some of your previous work, because maybe that'd be a great way into what the concept of our story idea would be today. So I've seen on your IMDb, you have a series of documentaries or like feature films that are centered around alien crop circles to thrillers. But I'd love from your vantage point, if you could just kind of walk us through a bit of those productions, and then we can kick it off from there.
Yeah. All right. So I'm Geoffrey D. Calhoun, host of the Successful Screenwriter Podcaster. So with my work, I have like a wide range. I've done some alien docs. We did talk about earlier off screen. We talked about crop circles, which is really cool. Fact or fiction stuff. I've got a thriller on Tubi. I've got, which is an original. I've got a thriller on Lifetime. It's looking like I'm going to have a thriller that's a theatrical release. So I'm doing a lot of thrillers right now, but I can write anything. I've been known for my horror comedies. So I've pretty much done everything but like period pieces. So nice. I am open genre-wise for wherever you want to go.
Okay, sweet. So a lot of times we start off with a series of questions that lead up to it. But looking at your IMDb, I did have a thought. And I wanted to see if you wanted to follow this as well. So when I looked at it, I realized in this current catalog of Storybreakers episodes, and even the 100 plus that we have in the first version that's now archived online, we've never handled an alien abduction idea. And for some reason, I was thinking, you know what? This might be the best guest to come on board and help us create from scratch some original idea that's based on alien abduction.
Right on.
So what do you think about that?
I love it. Let's do it. What genre are we looking at? So are we looking at thriller, comedy? I mean, obviously sci-fi, but do we want to do a drama? What kind of sandbox do we want to play in with an alien abduction film?
It's a really good question. I think we're setting ourselves up for a lot of traps if we really go the super serious route. There's a lot of material done that's on the like found footage horror kind of angle. Whereas I think in this area, I don't know, you mentioned comedy. Like I've got some screen credits from features being comedies too. So what if we try to take it a bit of the comedic direction with a little bit of thrills and surprises kind of built into the concept?
I love the idea, and I love the idea of breaking genre as well. So if we want to try and get crazy with this roller coaster, we can. So we can do an alien abduction, comedy, or thriller. I think that sounds awesome. Do you have ideas off the top of your mind, or do you want to me to launch into my methodology of how I break story? Like, how do you want to do it?
I'm more than happy to follow your lead, but usually the way we do it is we start asking questions about like, is it set in the past, the present, the future? We kind of build some of the ingredients. However, the creative part is that everybody has their own method. So if you'd like to present us with how you kind of find your way into a story, I'm more than happy to check it out.
Yeah, all right, thanks. I appreciate that. So, I mean, I wrote a book on this stuff called The Guide for Every Screenwriter. So I start with what you've done right here, which is our concept, which is our alien abduction, which is a comedy or thriller. So what I need now is our theme. What are we trying to say with the story?
I think with a story like this, again, it feels like there's been a lot of material done in like not really new, like the past few years I haven't really thought of this. It feels more like a classic idea that you could say was worn into the ground enough where people didn't want to see it, but now it feels a bit fresh. And now I also think an alien abduction, it feels like a lot of that comes from a very rural or kind of American perspective, where like you would expect somebody in small town Americana to come with this statement. Whereas what if it was a different culture and where somebody turns around now and says, I think I was abducted by an alien? And what does that like local community do with this information? And then it turns into, I don't know, maybe even a reputational thing. So it's not really about the person who, it's not really about the alien abduction, but it's about somebody whose reputation in their community is they're trying to rebuild based on this experience.
I like kind of where you're going.
Because again, I would imagine most of these times, and you'll even see it in major blockbusters like Independence Day, where the local drunk is like, I was abducted by an alien. Whereas if you move it to like any new cultured location or different country, it feels like immediately you're playing in a new sandbox, and that community would respond completely differently. Like I can even imagine, like my background, like I'm from Alaska originally, but my parents are Irish and I lived in Ireland half my life. So I have so much history in village, small town Ireland. And I could just imagine a scenario where if somebody in a rural small town Ireland showed up and said that they were abducted by an alien, people would just think they're out of their mind, even though hypocritically, that same culture loves superstition. They love the conversations about banshees and all these kind of mythological fairies. But the idea of like, oh, but it's an alien, that's absurd. I think there's so much ground you could actually cover if you just take this not worn, but this kind of paved concept, but moved it to a different culture to see what happens there. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think I got notes. Yeah. So if we put it more in a city, like a population, and we make it someone prominent in the city, someone well-known in the city, someone with a reputation, then we can work in a theme, right, of who am I, right? Because most people identify, like if you ask somebody who they are, they'll tell you what they do.
Yeah,
right.
That's true.
So they identify themselves with their occupation, with who they are, or they might even tell you how many Instagram followers they have. So like that is their sense of self, even though that's not who they are as a person, it's who they think they are as a person. So much so that like police officers, for instance, they have after they retire, they tend to live a short lifespan because they identify themselves with being cops so much that when they are no longer a cop, they no longer have a sense of self. They no longer have a sense of purpose, right?
Wow.
So if we take a public person and someone who is totally wrapped up in that persona, and we put them in as an abductee, and then their whole life is shattered, so they no longer have that sense of self, and they have to kind of pack together all of these different things as they're stripped away to figure out who they are. That is really fun to explore.
That sounds great. Yeah.
So who is this public person? I mean, we could do anywhere from the governor to the mayor to a journalist to a prominent TV reporter. We could do the weatherman. I mean, who do you see as this person that gets abducted?
Yeah. So I love the idea of somebody who has some type of authority. It may not be over the public themselves, but somebody who's prominent. That makes complete sense. A bit of authority. Yeah. We do have an opportunity to play with the hypocrisy of something where if this person is opposed to, if they're opposed to
immigration,
a certain angle. Yeah. And something where when they are faced with this new experience, nobody believes them. So they're immediately going on to their arc and their growth period.
Yeah. So very kind of like closed-minded in their perspective. They don't necessarily have to be a conservative as far as like political party, but they have a very shut off personality. Maybe they are like an online streamer that tends to be extreme in their opinions, like they're very opinionated, like a Joe Rogan or something like that. They have a very strong sense of self that way.
Yeah, I think so. I think you can get there with a government official, but when you were talking about journalists or that kind of media figure, they're so open to the public. So there'll probably be a ton of material that they've previously devoted to. Like they've put their flag in a certain ground, and there's public record. So watching them go through this experience and then backtrack and then kind of like have to change their mind, but that's not who they're publicly known for, actually feels quite fun. And that's where you get a lot of the growth from this character.
Okay. All right. So we're going with some kind of online personality, or maybe they have a TV show. Just because I see like a set piece of a scene where they're on TV and they just have like a full mental breakdown. I think that could be fantastic.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah.
But also if you have somebody who has a bit of those media connections,
sure.
Because I can imagine like where we could take this would be this person, like nobody would believe them, right?
Yeah.
So what would they try to do? Maybe they would try to have it happen again, or they would try to engage to recreate it basically. So if they're going to recreate it, they want to bring people or like the equipment to capture the evidence. And I think that's already where we could like start bringing in a character like this. So having them in that space where they have those connections, it's easier for us to ensure the audience believes that. If you had somebody who has literally is a technophobe or is a loner, it's very difficult for them to pull that off. Whereas somebody who's very opinionated and has connections and is a bit of a loudmouth will turn around and be like, no, check this out. And I imagine the first time nothing happens, which reinforces people not believing them. But now they're going to look for alternative measures to see how they can prove that this act actually occurred.
I love that. And I love the connections part of it, because people like in our business, in the journalistic business, their connections are all shallow. They're transactionally based. So I love having scenes and moments that can reveal character, and not just their essential character, but in the relationships with their other characters. So if we take this central character, this pseudo-journalist, and we put him in these situations where he's pulling favors from people to prove that he's not crazy, okay? And then we put it in a situation where it just totally falls apart, and we show how shallow those connections are, is fantastic. And then if we can work in someone from this subgenre support group, abductee character or characters that start to support him as a person, then we can maybe start to show the humanity there. Like maybe these people aren't just crazy.
Yeah. So that actually makes me think, I mean, do we go that 180 degree with it? And we're talking about somebody who's made a career out of debunking conspiracy theories, or like a pure realist who like they love to interview people who have wild stories and then just wrap them up until they prove that never happened, because that is the complete opposite of what this person is going to go through. Because now this person has to turn around and say, it happened to me, but their reputation, everything about them has been debunking these types of ludicrous, harebrained, unrealistic scenarios and stories. But now they're the one who went through it. And even their connections, their network, they have to be careful because they're so identified with the opposite of this experience, which feels actually pretty delicious. It's a bit on the nose, but I think it seems so, like, where else would you go? Like, it actually could be like a real, it could be a real Christmas Carol moment where somebody has to like completely change their vantage point.
I think as long as his show isn't just about debunking other people, but that is an aspect of it, then I don't think it's it's not too on the nose. Like if he's billing himself as like the debunk specialist, then I think like, okay, we're dipping in a river of ham at that point. But if it's just part of his like pseudo journalistic approach as a streamer and his following, I think that can work. And it can get really interesting because these guys, when they go after somebody, that person can get doxxed and it can ruin their lives. So like he could be responsible for like ruining people's lives who are just trying to tell the story, but he doesn't take any credit for it, or she or they, whatever character we design, doesn't take credit for it. He has a very hands-off approach. Like, I just show the evidence. I'm not responsible for what happens online until he becomes that victim, right? And then we start to see the real people behind the abuse, which can then roll into our theme of like, who are you as a person, and how does that public persona kind of affect who you are? I mean, you can, depression and all kinds of stuff, you can really get in there. So I think that could be really juicy to mine that.
Yeah. And then you can also have those moments where he goes to that community of people who, if for anything, he's been a negative presence for, but they embrace him, which he didn't really expect. So they don't have that confrontational attitude, which he kind of fears, but he does need some kind of guidance, because when his people don't believe him, who's he going to turn to? He does have, which we would have established, he knows how to contact them. He's aware that they exist. So when he goes to them, he's very nervous, hesitant. There's a bit of shame for how he behaved, and they're like open arms, welcoming him in. And he's learning again, even about that part of your personality, and that empathy that was lacking whenever he was exploiting stories for his own benefit. Now he has that shared experience, and it's relatable, but they're not treating him in a way that he treated them. And so he's really learning something new out of that scenario.
Yeah, I would even have him get rejected from that group first off, because they think he's trying to, interject himself as a spy and to expose them more, so they wouldn't be trustworthy. He would have to somehow go through something to earn his way into the group. So that way it's just not this easy, like, hey, I'm here now as abducted, we're all family, we're friends. They'd be like, no, you've ruined lives. And then you have to like face that and see that. And then something would happen. Maybe he gets abducted again and they find him naked on the side of a road. One of the abductees from the community finds him. Or there's pictures posted of him naked and people are like, oh, he's on drugs. It's ruined his career. They think he's an addict. Oh, he should go to rehab. And in actuality, he just went to bed that night and woke up slimy and naked. So like it could be really interesting to like really break this person down, reject it from everyone. And then the group brings him in, or certain members from the group starts to realize, no, he's going through the thing, guys. And then he starts going that. But then he would fight that new group's connection as well, because he doesn't want to be defined as that. He was defined as this debunker guy. Now he doesn't want to be defined as an abductee. So they can all be part of this growth. It'd be very interesting.
Absolutely. And it makes sense too, because from what their perspective is, he might be playing a long con on them, where it's like, oh, he's trying to infiltrate us, to record us, to get more content. So from what they see, they don't believe him either, which is quite interesting, because he didn't believe them. And so like you actually do have exciting, twisted, tender moments all together in these kind of scenes. Well, the opportunity for such as well.
Absolutely. And you can paint in comedic moments in there to make it lighthearted, so it's not just this constant deconstruction of a man. Yeah,
that's so true. Great. Where do you think this should be located? Do you think this would be, because we're saying earlier, it shouldn't be rural, small town America. That's what we know this for. But do you think it's a big urban city in America, or is it a different location completely?
It could be a big city, man. So we can go LA to London. I mean, really, you can go anywhere, as long as it's a bigger city with a large population, and you just got somebody who's prominent over there. I agree with you. I don't think we should go small, rural, anything. because we want to try and break this genre and really talk about it. So, yeah, and New York, LA, Detroit, London, whatever you think is a big old city.
I'm actually leaning towards London out of those options because, again, they don't really have that experience of anybody saying that they've been abducted by aliens. Whereas even in America, even the accent of that kind of experience feels very American. So
Right.
having somebody in a busy, hustling, bustling metropolitan in the United Kingdom, people are like, this has never happened to anybody in like ever.
Yeah,
like
that's great.
it's just, you're the once off and you're saying this happened to you. You've made a career out of embarrassing people, just exposing them for what they say. And now you're the one, like, we just don't believe you. And we think you're lying for some twisted way that you want to get out of us. You want to get something out of us. We don't know what it is, but we don't believe you.
He wants a ratings bump or something.
Yeah. That's excellent. Yeah, that's great.
I think that's great. Yeah, we could definitely do that. So we got a British dude over there, and podcaster or pseudo journalist, has his own daytime show or something.
Yeah, they can be. I mean, he could have all that. A lot of these types are actually multifaceted with their media coverage, where they do have an online show, but then they're featured regularly as a guest contributor on a lot of talk shows, evening news programs. They do events and they do speakerships. So they're very much a freelance media figure. So we don't really have to tie ourselves into like one of these, but this is his personality. This is his mission, where he goes and interviews people. Not specifically, I agree with you, he doesn't have to be specifically tied down to the debunking, but maybe out of all of his interviews and his media, that's kind of what he's been known as. So it's just, if somebody would describe him, they'd be like, oh, he's the one who interviews all the crackpots and like basically exposes the nonsense. Maybe he doesn't even like being defined by that as such as well. So we're back into what you're defined by. He doesn't want to be defined by them, even if he's the one exposing them. But when he looks at the figures and the metrics, they're the episodes that get the best results. So he's even one level away from them again, where he goes, I don't want to be defined by them. Even if I expose them, no. Like, I have aspirations to interview more prestigious candidates. So he looks down upon these people, which could be interesting for his growth to the end.
Yeah. And that's your stakes right there. So the stakes would be that he is in contract negotiations actively to go prime time. So he's going to be on network. He's going to be on the BBC on a legit TV show. He's going to have his own nighttime show, and he's just about to break in. They're getting ready to sign a contract. Then the dude gets abducted.
Nice. That is so clean. Yeah, I like it. So we should give him a name, or what we've done in the past is we select an actor just so we could use that name. So we're not consistently saying that guy, this guy, things like this. So kind of descriptive wise, are we talking about mid-30s, somebody who's had enough time to cultivate the experience that can deliver to this point? I don't imagine it's somebody like, I don't imagine early 20s or even mid-20s. This kind of feels like you need a little bit of the feeling of an experience, so you can emphasize this guy's been doing this and set in his ways long enough that this is the result. It could be somebody who's even 40, maybe some kind of English actor.
I gotta think of Alfie Allen. I like.
He's very good. Yeah, I can see
Alfie
that.
Allen. Yeah. That works for me, unless you have an alternative.
Nope, sounds great. He's got a distinct quality to, I think he can play unlikable, but probably has enough talent and charm to kind of bring the audience along with the ride, because we're going to end this where we should not be disliking this person. But we're going to try to start off. Yeah. Like, it's going to be quite the task for what we've described who this person is.
You want somebody. See, there's the likability versus empathy, right? Like we can have a character who isn't likable, but if they're empathetic, the audience will get behind him. And if I look at Alfie Allen on Game of Thrones, I mean, he was an unlikable character who went through this crazy journey, and you got behind him as a character. So I think as an actor, he can pull that off. So
Yeah.
I think it would work for this script.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Alfie, that's who we refer to this character as going forward. It's just we've done this so often, and after a while, it's like we can't keep saying this person, this guy. It's like just throw the name in there, and it helps us co-visualize who we're speaking about. So it's great. All right, so what should be the next point? Are we ready to go to the opening scene, or should we more kind of build out the experiences that we're trying to find?
I think we have a pretty good breakdown outline of the script as ready, and then I mean supporting characters would be kind of what comes last. So if we know what we're doing with supporting characters, then we would have subplots and stuff. But I'm assuming we're not getting that detailed in the subplots. So we just worry about the main plot.
Yeah, I used to refer to this as the dirty first draft, where it'll be a bit loose. It's just a bit of fun, and we're not expecting all the answers. However, if people want to listen to previous episodes, it can be startling how everything ties together sometimes. We're like, did not expect us to figure that out. But, if there's loose ends, it's fine. A lot of this is just a casual, creative conversation. But yeah, I think I'd like to too. Let's go to the start.
All right. So how do you want him to start out? I love introductions, and I think they're really important for characters. When done properly, you really get an audience behind the character. So do we want to show him? There's two ways we can go. We can go with him struggling with something and failing, or we can show him really, really great at something. Either one of those ways is a great way to get an audience behind a character. So what would you like to do?
I kind of think with those options, seeing him succeed maybe in one of those interview scenarios where he catches somebody out, but then he walks away going, I told you no more of those people. I've done enough of these kind of interviews, and we kind of get across but this is where the ratings are. But he's like, yeah, but that's not where my goals are. It's like, I need to get out of this area and into the higher stakes. So he's like, he wants to basically interview higher level politicians and not these crackpots with their crazy stories. So you've seen him succeed in this kind of engaging interview that feels reminiscent of like a video podcast, let's say, like in person. That would be not these kind of screens, but like a real in-person kind of grilling. So he's gotten what he wanted out of the interview. But then we see that the interview itself wasn't something that he wanted. He wants more. He wants to get out of this specific level of guests because his goal is to make it to the big time. So in that early scene, you've actually got a lot done there. And we've showed that he's quite engaging. He's quite quick-witted. I think that'll serve us later, even to his detriment, where people understand that he's quite a smooth talker. So like when he's trying to tell them something, they're like, yeah, you're not going to sell me on that. We know you. You're a salesman and you're trying to sell us. I don't know what you're trying to sell us, but there's something. Eventually I'll be the product, if I can't see the product, I am the product is an old phrase I love.
I love that. And to bump on that, I would, since we want to show him being over it, instead of cutting in late to the scene where we already show him in the interview, I would show him coming on to set, coffee in hand, and he's just over it. Like his assistant walks up to him, and his assistant is giving him the rundown of who he's interviewing and what's happening, and he's already done his homework. He already knows. So he's like, yeah, got it. I understand. Nope, I know. Good. Here we go. Coffee. Oh, it's cold. He complains about it, whatever, just to give that feeling of this is a guy who's done this a million times and he doesn't want to do it anymore. And then maybe we mention the primetime interview or whatever with the assistant he has, who's like his go-to person. And then he sits down and then just does a cold read right off of the person before they even get right into the interview to show like this guy's got his number. And then we hit the interview, like you said, and it's full exposure. And then he just looks at the camera. Okay, did we get that? Are we done? And then he's up and he's out.
Yeah, I love it. That makes complete sense. And probably then he's looking at his phone. He's got an email. Maybe he sourced an opportunity, but then he turns to his assistant going, see, that's what I was telling you to do. Like, I had to do this. This is where I should be.
Yeah.
Like even then he's like, I've done this. As he's walking into that interview, he's probably like texting on his phone or so. Interview's done. He's got the response. So he's like, I am so done. I love that idea that the cold read, he's figured him out. Like he's just autopiloting this type of work now. And that really establishes so much about this character. But then he's getting off the show and he's like, I did it. So I had to go out myself and secure this next interview or this opportunity that could lead to what we're saying, which is, can he get his own prime time show or segment of a show? Like this is where he wants to get to. This should be, if that's not the next scene, we should be establishing that this is his want at that very early point.
Yeah, I mean, he could be off to lunch. He could be off to a meeting with that company. I mean, he could be on his way to the meeting and right into the negotiations right there. That works for me.
Yeah, I like it. Absolutely. Then I kind of feel like, should we mix in, like we do jump around here, so it's not going to be completely linear, but I'm just wondering how the abduction happens. And then that'll help us bridge to what that is. Because that's going to be the vital moment. So we're probably beforehand going to want to have that meeting where it's like securing, like, this is it. He's about to sign up.
Yeah,
and then later that evening, this happens. But is that something where he's sleeping peacefully in bed? Or did he go out on the town, especially in a London scenario? And then that happens and he wakes up in a bed or on the road, So what does that abduction look like? Because I think knowing that, we can figure out from that intro to that moment quite well.
So there's a couple of ways I see that we can handle it. And I think both ways are fun. It's just which way we want to do. We can treat the abductions like a natural disaster villain antagonist. Stay with me. Means it's faceless, right? So when you watch an earthquake movie or a volcano movie, the antagonist is Mother Nature. So we could treat the abductions as their own kind of antagonist, where we're not seeing aliens, we just see the aftermath of it. Or we can build out the quote alien abduction, but I would do it in a fun way where it's someone he meets on the street instead of it being like a creepy gray guy with a probe, which we've seen a million times. What if he cuts someone off in traffic, or he bumps in front of somebody at the coffee shop, and that happens to be whatever alien in disguise it is studying humanity? And so then we could build that antagonist relationship he has with that person, creature, thing who just looks slightly weird, and it can provide a lot more opportunity for character and dialogue.
I love it. I even love the idea that that there's a being who is trying to do something and he actually interjects. So he's kind of earned what happened. It isn't that he was plucked out of obscurity. It's like, maybe if he wasn't so arrogant and reckless, this wouldn't have happened. So he's active in having this occur to him, which I think is absolutely delicious. So I really like that.
And go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
You can have comedic bits with the alien, showing up. So every time you just got this weird dude showing up who's just quirky and doesn't make sense, following him randomly. So that's where you could kind of bring in the comedy bits a little bit, and he could be trying to talk to this guy, trying to figure out, like, what the hell are you doing? You're destroying my life, and go from that. It could be cool.
That's really interesting. So if we go with more of what we would imagine a human kind of figure, then this person can reoccur throughout the story. Whereas if it was the alien as we kind of stereotypically know it, this thing wouldn't be showing up in public scenarios. Because I can imagine he'd be like, it's him over there, you know? And everyone's like, wait, what is this? And they look around and like, the person's gone. And it's like, he was in this room with us right now. And it's like, I don't know, was it him? Is that, you know, like
can you see him right now? He's right there. Like, that's great.
Is he over my shoulder right now?
That's
no, he was over your shoulder.
Yeah.
He was over his shoulder. You know?
Yeah. No, I love it. And you can really play with that. Like, is he invisible, or is he not there, or is he changing faces? Or does our character really start to think he's losing his mind because he's talking to a guy that no one else can see? So it can be really, really interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's great. It could even be that, because when you were bringing those options up, I was also wondering how much of the abduction should we see? Should we really see, like, so the audience goes, yes, we know this happened, or is it more of those kind of flashing moments and he wakes up and now we as an audience, we're not even totally convinced this is happening yet.
You definitely do that.
I love that. That could be quite fun.
Absolutely.
Because then when he's questioning his own sanity, we can also empathize with that question. Whereas if we flat out know it, then we might be like, no, it did happen to you. But I actually like to be with his mindset. Staying with him when he actually has those questions. It's like, maybe it didn't happen that way. Maybe you did meet that one stranger, kind of get a little cocky and aggressive with him, and then a bit of flashing lights, wakes up and he goes, well, I think I was abducted, or were you drugged? I don't know. And I know I was abducted. I
were you sleepwalking naked? You know, I mean, like, there's so much fun stuff you can do with it and really play around with, like, security camera footage and stuff like that, debunking or confirming that he is abducted. So yeah, it's a great way to keep an audience interested when they have the hook in their mind of, is this real? Because once you engage the audience and they're trying to look for clues to figure out if it's real or not real, they forget they're watching a movie and they are invested in the story. So I think that's an awesome hook.
Great. Yeah, I like that. So I think we should also probably flesh out a bit of the characters so we know who we can kind of go to. So some kind of girlfriend figure or wife. I kind of imagine girlfriend who would probably want a little bit more out of this relationship, but he's been so focused
not committed
that he hasn't committed. Because if you want to go the wife route, that feels like more of a concrete relationship, whereas this one could also feel a bit fragile. Like the way he's behaving could jeopardize this relationship too, which is interesting because then it can be like, once I get this deal, then we can talk about us. And she's like, we've been putting that off for 7 years now. Like the marker, the goal line changes, says so it's never enough. And then when he starts cracking up, she's like, look, I don't really know what to believe, but it sounds like you're moving the goalpost again, you know? And so she might even be thinking about, like, I think you're doing this because of me. So she's internalizing his motivation to be something about their relationship.
I love that. And I love seeing that scene, but as a speed dating scene that he does with different partners. So he has several partners on the side, and he's having the exact same conversation with all of them. Well, you're pushing it. Well, I'm just really busy with work, because this guy doesn't care about anybody but himself and his job, because that's what he identifies with, right? So he has all of these like pseudo-failed relationships, and they all think they're the one. They all think they're going to save him because he's broken, right? Yeah. And so he just keeps. So we have like a speed dating scene where he keeps saying, "It's not you. You know, it's me. I'm not committed," and then he just keeps over and over. I think that if we do like 3 of those, it can be really funny.
You could even set that up early before he gets abducted, where he's on 3 different dates, or he's with 3 different women, but his conversation is intercut is the same thing. So he's talking about himself, and it's like he's literally had this like reflection of his like this moment of success, and it's like the setting changes, the audience in front of him changes, but his mindset, his topic is so self-centered. It's not about them at all. He's just wants that audience to listen to him recount his achievements, which is such an awful thing to do.
It's great.
But I think visually you could have
It's
so
great.
much fun with that.
That's exactly who you need as a character.
Yeah.
But because he thinks he's so popular and loved, right? Maybe even
Yeah.
he gets recognized in public, you know, and he's just like, yeah, selfie or whatever. Yeah, I think that's great.
You probably should give him some like fan as well who follows him around. Somebody who's he knows and maybe even uses for kind of day-to-day favors and things like that. I think a character like that kind of assistant role, not the official assistant who's paid, just that kind of like hopeful fan who wants to be his friend someday, but he's like, yeah, maybe you could do this for me, you know? So when everyone leaves him or everyone disbelieves him, there's this one person who's like, I believe you. He's like, oh no, now this is the only person I have left in my life is you. Like, this is how we basically created a level where he never wanted to go. And he's, because nowhere else, he's in their apartment. And he's like, I don't know why how did I
mean,
get
you would
here?
there would have to be a shrine to him in the apartment.
Yeah.
So that would have to happen. And then one thing I would do with this band is like somehow I don't know, they wear a shirt that he has, like he has a shirt or a hoodie or a watch or something, and then this band always has like the cheap version of that. I think it'd be
Nice. This is the person who would also help him when he's going, I have an idea, like let's recreate it. Let's recreate the moment or the circumstances that led to this. Because I feel like he needs that assistant or even that person to pitch this idea to. So he's not isolated in doing this. Because what we're going to do in this is we're isolating him from all these relationships and connections. But we know we're going to need him to talk this out with someone or someone to help him, like even holding the camera. So you need that true believer person in his life who's like, I'm with you. Like, finally, this is my opportunity to step up and I'll be irreplaceable for Alfie. So I think having those at least characters will just really help us for the rest of the story.
I agree. And part of his growth with that character will be for him to realize how toxic he's become to that character. And so by trying to help that character like get beyond their obsession with him, he knocks them down like he would with one of his interviewee subjects, and then realize like, oh my God, I really broke this person in the wrong way. I could have helped them better. And so I think that would be a good way for him to grow and change as a character throughout the story. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's great. So then let's go back to the abduction moment. So we've got the intro. We can just suggest in that opening bit that he gets the opportunity to go in prime time. We've introduced his multiple relationships. I think it might be even in leaving his last date. That's basically when we're having it. He's gone. It's on his own. It should be as an isolated moment. I still think it should be in the city. So it isn't like I was on a dusty, lonely road. We could even play with where it happened, just so happened to be like the blind spot between surveillance, which is actually great for it being in London because that's one of the most surveilled cities in the entire world. So he just happened to be abducted in the one blind spot in that entire neighborhood. That's very convenient, especially for somebody who's debunked people with blind spots before. So he would know where these are potentially.
Yeah,
that's like,
I love that.
He gets caught. But as you say, it might be something where he engaged with this figure first.
Absolutely.
Or kind of they were doing their thing, and then because he got in their way or kind of collided with them, he was put on their radar.
Exactly. I love it. Yeah, I think that he gets abducted, and then I think he wakes up naked in just the most inappropriate places, like church or a wedding or a garden of a birthday party. Like, just he wakes up at these crazy places, slimy and naked, and I think it would be a great visual gag.
I like that. I actually literally, with two of those options, I could just see combining it where you start with a wedding and the bride and groom open the church door to like go to their car and he's just outside on the ground and I was like shocked. He wakes up, he's dazzled, dazed, and people are just shocked and he just cut. Like, and, that was literally it. And he's sitting there with a blanket around him with a cup of coffee and they're like, what happened? He's like, I don't know.
Somebody's got to give him a dollar bill somewhere.
Yeah. Like, what happened? I don't know. Like, are you on drugs? He's like, no, I was just out. I met some person. I don't know. And he's getting like that. Then I think he probably, the flashbacks of what happened start to occur, which is again great for us as the audience because we didn't see it happen live, quote, but we're experiencing flashbacks with him, which can be very subjective. So it's like, did this happen? Like he has memories of this, but he doesn't really understand it. So I think after he wakes up, after he's like basically sheltered by somebody and one of his girlfriends shows up or his fan, somebody comes to help him. He's getting these moments where it's like, what happens? Like, I don't know. And on a screen, you can see those kind of moments. It's like, he wouldn't even want to say immediately. He's like, I don't believe this.
No.
You probably then have him like pacing around his apartment or his lavish accommodation where he's like piecing more and more of this together, or he's finding like marks on him where he's like, that wasn't there, or even some kind of, not a tattoo but a birthmark of kinds that wasn't there to begin with.
I think that works.
Explain this. So he can actually show people like, where did this come from? And they're like, well, we don't know. Like they wouldn't know if he had a birthmark or is it a boil? He's like, that's not a boil. I think it's a boil. Yeah. You can have a lot of fun with everybody thinking it's a boil. Just
a bed bug bite. Exactly. I think that works.
You fell asleep outside. You could have got bit by anything. Like there's no matter what he says, there's a complete rational counterpart to explain it, which is what his whole history leading up to this was about, which is taking the supernatural and providing natural explanations to it.
I think that works. I think the flash is, flash of light. He's floating in bed or something like that. A dark, noisy room, loud noise, all of these things, which can all be explained from somebody sleepwalking. It's just to create doubt, I think could really work. And then we get him to doing an interview, and then we got to make the interview live because we got to have ramifications. So he's live streaming with someone, which is going to be his big episode before he signs his contract. Yeah. And then somehow he gets triggered. A flash of light from a studio light or something hits his eyes. He gets visually triggered and then just has a breakdown live on screen in front of everybody, and then starts screaming and yelling and ranting or whatever. Just shows the awful side of him so that he gets canceled, basically.
I love that. I even love the flash of light that triggers it because that's exactly the environment he'd be in. Totally. I could even see right before that, like we build to that scene because that feels like a huge moment. But even to go to the moment where he's having these initial struggles, he's trying to convince people, look, something did happen to me, and there was a figure I met that night. I don't know what happened, et cetera, et cetera. Then he's secured that one meeting with the executives, and he's going to go to their headquarters for the interview. So he gets there probably in the lobby. So it wouldn't be like this would happen in the boardroom, but maybe when he's like in the lobby about to meet them, he sees the figure, flips out, and runs off. And they're just going, I don't know what just happened. Like, and his agent or his manager has to turn around and go, sorry, he'll be right back. And he never comes back. Like he actually just absolutely freaked out. So we're building blocks that lead to that scene you just described, where it's like now they're watching this guy on record flipping out. So that he's created
sweating, this freaking pattern. Out.
Yeah. Where they're like, we think he's on something. We think he's psychotic. He just had a breakdown. Maybe living in that mindset or that subject matter has finally cracked him is basically what's happening. And this is a person who doesn't want to be defined by that. Who's now, they're saying, you're losing it, and maybe you've just been in that world too long. He's like, I have been in this world too long. I don't want to be here anymore. It's like, yeah, but we don't want you here. Like you're used, you're no good for us. So yeah, I think that would totally work. And that works really well. That leads to that moment where he flips out on screen, because then it's irrefutable recorded evidence of this flip out. And that's probably a really dark moment for him, where he'd need solace. And that's probably where he would seek out answers, which would come in the form of the people in the community that he's used so much. So he probably at that point reaches out to them. And as you've already stated, he probably gets rejected from them as well.
Absolutely.
And has to basically earn their trust. And that's where we can start really building that empathy, where it's like, because we've taken him, he's done some pretty horrible things. So it'll take a while before the audience starts getting on his side. But I think through these experiences, if they buy into, like, this could have happened to him and he just wants some answers, or he wants some empathy, he's not getting it. So then he goes to the people who required empathy when he didn't provide it.
Yeah, no, I think that works. So Act 2 and 2A, he's going towards the abductee survivor support group, gets rejected. Then I would say he tries to reach out to some girlfriends. They, not only does he get rejected, they don't answer him. He notices like opinion pieces taken out, like from one of his girlfriends that dated him, and then put out that I always knew he was crazy and he was losing it, so she can get, or they can get some exposure, piggytailing off of him, because that happens a lot. So that could be another stab in the back. He might go to his assistant, and then maybe the assistant starts to help him out. That doesn't go over very well, which then he ends up at his fan's apartment, where he sees the shrine to himself, and then realizes, oh my God, this person's crazy, and maybe tries to break them of their obsession with him. Then I would say he gets abducted again. And
I think, I love all of this, by the way, but I think right before he's abducted again, he goes, I have to recreate it. And we get that scene where
with the fan. Yeah, that works. Yeah.
So like and then maybe it's right after the failed stunt, the publicity stunt where it didn't work, he gets captured again. So he's like, then he comes back, which is great, because this is somebody who publicly tried to have this happen. Like, he recreated it, thought this was it. Now he's on record again, and like, he's putting his whole reputation on this.
Yeah.
When it doesn't work, he does get abducted. He comes back now saying it happened, and they're like, it didn't happen. Like, it didn't happen.
I too did. Yeah.
Yeah, I showed up. It was a dud. You wasted.
You could show
I want
the
my
chat
time
section.
back.
Yeah, that's great. I love it.
So after he fails, and even the fan probably is going, I don't know. Like, and he starts, so what you were saying is he's at a low point being at his friend's house with the shrine to him, but through this other experience, he's even lost them. Now he's pleading with them to be like, no, stay with me. And they're like, I don't know.
Like, I thought you were cool, man.
I'm not sure if it benefits me to be around you anymore.
Yeah, that's hilarious. No, we'll hang out later. Yeah, sure. Like, he blows them off. I love that.
Yeah,
I love that the fan blows him off. That's great growth.
Right.
That's even better. So he gets abducted, and then he ends up, I don't know, slimy naked at a birthday party or something. And like Nana's 90th birthday party, he's there, wakes up in the bushes. She thinks it's a stripper, so she's all excited. They didn't order a stripper, but he's there. She's, maybe we make the dollar gag thing a joke, and she throws $1 at him. I don't know, that's probably too far, but
Right.
So then one of the other abductees is at the birthday party. Maybe it's their grandma or their great grandma or their aunt or something, and
Yeah.
recognizes as him, and or catches, or they're on the street driving home and they see him naked walking down the street and they realize, holy crap, it's him. And so then they get him back in the group, for that support
100%.
group.
I think so. And you could even go like very visually where if we establish it appears naked, and also usually there's some kind of birthmark or kind of marking on him.
Sure.
That person might have seen that, because he's not going around showing everybody this. He's not at that level on the public facing piece, but like he's at a low. This person comes in and says like, I believe you. And then they show the same marking that they have. And they were like, cause it happened to me. And he's like,
back to work.
Oh my gosh. Now, like we completely, like now him and this individual, like now agree with each other. And that person has enough empathy going, look, I actually think this happened to him. I know what it's like when nobody believes me. He's like, sorry about that. You know, like they just have this like really nice, intimate moment where he's just kind of like alone with no recordings. And he's like, I'm sorry about that. Like, you know, and then they're like, come with us. Look, we'll bring you in. So they bring him into the group, or that kind of informal communal setting where he can kind of, this is where he actually could grow so much, because he gets to, now he's in an environment where they're telling the stories that he's heard on record so much, and he's been so smug and dismissive about, but now for the first time they're recounting stories and he is like completely tuned in. He's like, he's present, and he wasn't present, as you even established at the beginning, where he's like cold walking in, has no clue. He's now like right there in the room, like emotionally, spiritually, he's right there with them, taking it all in.
And he starts a podcast show and starts interviewing the people behind the abductions and about their lives and who they are, so that they're more than just an abductee. He starts revealing the humanity behind them, which gets lost in this fantastical story. So instead of just being the guy who's, you know, talking about the abduction and debunking it, he's getting into the people, he's getting into the personal lives, he's getting into the consequences or how these people change, and he becomes like an advocate for them. He becomes a voice for the people who have been lost. I think that can show growth for his character.
Yeah, I think so. It's really nice. Is there something that we can do with that figure again? Like, so basically we've established that he interacted with it, it abducted him, it kind of followed him around a bit, it abducted him again. I feel like we have to go back to that at the climax, or somehow like we need that concept or that part of it to be paid off in some shape or form.
So do we reveal that it's a real abduction, or do we reveal that it's just his mind playing tricks on him? Do we leave it open? I like to come up with a resolute ending. I don't like to leave it open. So like I would have a conversation with him and the alien, where he's like, I get it. Like he sees him in public and he's like, I get it. I understand why you did it. I wasn't being a person. I wasn't truly living. I wasn't understanding people. I was trying to be the smartest guy in the room by putting everybody else down, by debunking these stories, when I realized I should have been listening to these stories and seeing the people behind these stories and seeing the humanity there. I understand why you did it. And then the alien can have whatever, response we want the alien to have, either like nodding and walking away or being like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. But then I would have the alien, as he's leaving, get cut off by another guy.
I love it.
And then like mark him with a pen or mark him with something, which are the marks that you're talking about. Like you just flick something on his wrist or flick something on the back of his neck and the guy's like this, so that we know that, okay, this alien is like an angel. This alien is going around and taking like jerks and showing them how to live a better life through abductions and studying. So he's like a two birds with one stone type of thing. So I think it's pretty fascinating.
I love that, because then you can have at the very beginning when he interacts, he slaps his neck.
Absolutely.
We get that visual that visual boomerang back again, like oh, I know. I love this. That is such a phenomenal ending. I agree. I think this is a thing where when he meets this entity, again, not in a public space, not being recorded, and he's not a person who wants this now. So he was previously trying to catch this on record to save his reputation. Whenever he meets this entity again, or this figure again, he's okay just talking and acknowledging it. And I don't think it says a word. I think he actually, like, kind of like a silent therapy session where like they're just staring at him and he's just unloading what he believes he learned. And then it turns around and walks away. Exactly as you say. I don't think it needs to have any kind of pure response. I think what we get as an audience is it acknowledges that he learned his lesson, but it doesn't need to be like, good for you, son. You know, like it's like just that the fact that it leaves him alone and he's the one who's confirmed that, look, I get it. And then when that amazing stinger at the end, pun intended, it wraps everything up to go, this is what it's doing. So the fact that we see it get kind of bumped off or kind of bumped into or interacted with again and tag someone, go, okay, I get it. This is going to continuously happen. That's the whole story. That awesome. Has to be the ending. That's fantastic.
This was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Good old Alfie Allen.
Yep. Go crush it.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that is the entire story of our alien abduction tale. So yeah, what do you think, Geoffrey?
Oh, this is fun, man. I love doing this stuff. I'm in my element here. And I think Alfie Allen getting abducted is the title of the script. So
yeah, great. So that's a wrap on our story. Where could our audience find you? Maybe you can provide any of the details or even tell them a bit more about your podcast as well.
You can hit me up on Instagram at Screenwriter Pod. I'm the Successful Screenwriter Podcast is my show. So you can just Google that. And if you want to read the book, it's The Guide for Every Screenwriter, and basically talks about how to create story like Chris and I did today.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, Geoffrey, thank you so much for coming on the show and building a great story with me. For the audience, you can subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, Writing Chops. But anyway, that's enough time for us today. Geoffrey, thank you so much for taking part on this. And for everybody else, I will see you next time for another Storybreakers. Take care.